smart. So next I want to introduce Prashat. Please give him a warm welcome. He is the one everybody's looking for. He's a CTO.
Uh-oh.
So yeah, he prepared for a lot of people talking to you, which is great. Yeah, we're very happy to have you here because that's an absolutely essential piece of everything. So what you have a presentation on here, so you can click through, right? It's about user experience and everything, about prototyping, all these little details you need to have if you want to go out and talk to investors or other people. And without further ado, if you introduce yourselves maybe quickly.
Sure. Yeah, so I'm Prashat, and I sort of got involved with this through Valerie heard about the startup that I'm with right now, which is local data. And it's very early, so if you go to the website, it talks about it, but you can't really use it yet. But I've been in technology for a few years, doing PM and then development, and then now at a startup. So just so I can help frame it, raise your hands if you have sort of like a tech or engineering or software background. Okay. Okay, no, that's cool. Yeah. So I mean, for startups, right? I think in the Bay Area we tend to think of startups as tech startups, and I think if you're trying to get people to drink Belgian beer, I think I heard earlier or something like that. So I'm more of a whiskey guy, but we'll see if it works on me. So there, technology is not sort of the core product, but then on the other hand, you have things like WhatsApp that's like you mentioned, which is very technology driven, and then things that are 100% technology that you sell to other businesses, and it's really not about an end user, it's just a technology product. So there's a whole spectrum, and so I mean, if we talk later, then we can kind of gear towards that. I think some of these things definitely apply across the board. So I mean, for a startup, prototyping is extremely important, right? So from day one, you're not going to start with your finished refined product. And we heard in talking about branding and logos and stuff like that, you'll change things, you'll talk to people, you're going to understand what works, what doesn't work, and based on that, you want to modify things. And so if you spend a lot of time just trying to have like the most kind of beautifully architected, refined thing, you'll be wasting a lot of time. Now, that isn't to say that you should, just kind of like freewheel it and have, crappy code or whatever. But you should definitely be approaching it with a mindset that if you have to throw away some component of this, you're not going to cry over it, and you should be able to do it fast enough that, you can throw it away and build a new piece if you need to, right? If the testing says, okay, let's try this other thing. And that's true, for the underlying technology. So if you're trying to, integrate with Facebook, and then you realize, oh, actually, we want to make more of a professional product, so we should integrate with LinkedIn instead of Facebook. Then, the next day you're doing something a little bit different. And so being able to try that out, and then as you have users, you can refine that. You can make sure that it doesn't just work for your, 5 to 20 friends, that it works for thousands or millions of people. Once you realize that this is the way you're going to do it. And the way I look at it, that sort of drives, or is rather driven by the user experience. So I think, Nick, you mentioned as his final point, you should be solving a problem, right? And that's sort of the most important thing. And it doesn't always get talked about. It's about how are you going to make money and this and that. But really, the point of creating this company is that you want to solve some problem. And then you think that by solving it well, you can make money, and you figure out how to do that. And you think that some technology will help you solve it well, and some partnerships will help you solve it well. So I think technology is meant to solve it well, and user experience is a big component of how well you'll solve that. So if this is a consumer product, you need to make sure that consumers can use this well, and you understand what problems they're having with it. Even if it's an enterprise product, right? You still, in the end, have some experience with your service, with your software, and sometimes it is users. You may sell to somebody, but then their employees end up using your service. So what is their experience with it? And are they going to do their jobs well? Are they going to be happy? And so the way I approach a large part of the technology we work on is that it should improve the user experience. It should support the user experience. And based on what you learn through this, then you prototype some new things and you figure out, okay, how can we do things differently? So I mean, one of the big reasons tends to, so I was asking Valerie, how should I frame this, what are people, how are they approaching it? And because a lot of you don't have sort of a technology background, you'll probably work with someone else who is doing the coding, or maybe try to find a CTO, or partner with somebody. And some of the different approaches that I've seen are you'll find someone, in an area where labor is cheaper. And maybe they're remote, so maybe it's in Asia or Eastern Europe or someplace like that. And if you're in San Francisco, there are time zone issues and all that. And I think that one problem with that is that you want someone who is sort of on the same page with how you're trying to build this user experience and how technology should support that. If you have a really good vision of that and you understand how technology plays into that, the fact that this is done on the client versus on the server or whatever, then that's less of a big deal. But otherwise, you're a little bit beholden to the person who's actually building this technology, and if they do things a little bit different, and it degrades user experience, then you have to get them to start over, or can you kind of get to that point all the way? So when you're trying to work with people who are actually building something, it's important that they sort of they're on board with your vision of how technology should fit into it. And then, okay, so how do you know that you're really doing this well, right? So you prototype this thing and you use it, but why was it a prototype? Why didn't you just kind of finish it and try to make it polished? So the point is that you want to be able to test this. So you want to take this into the field or bring people into your office and put it in front of them. And so you need to make sure this is something you can do that with. That doesn't mean it needs to be complete, right? So I've seen a lot of things that are testable and measurable that are actually completely fake underneath. And this is a really important part of this technology. If you have someone local, or if you're building the technology, you can actually just completely fake the website, and there's no server underneath, and all the data is fake data. And then you can figure out, okay, do they feel comfortable logging in, or do they want to know what the service is about before they log in? And you can test some of those things with pen and paper, or you can do some of it, with PowerPoint, and then when they click on something, it goes to the next slide, or whatever, and that slide, looks like a page now. But if you can do that with, with software, if you can do that, on the web, then it's much better, and you'll get, you'll be able to test it much more accurately. And so thinking about that, it's not just about building the end thing and having a server that scales and all these other buzzwords. It's about being able to really understand your service and understand how well you're delivering it. And then being able to measure that. So now, you can use Google Analytics, so there's all kinds of other services, you can do A/B testing. But just being able to even see people use it is a huge part of that. And so, it could be the difference between doing something on a website versus building building a native application that's mobile, right? So if you can do it on a website, you quickly change it and let people use it on their own phone, then it's much easier to measure it, even if in the end you want it to be on the App Store so you get visibility and all that, right? But then your prototyping can be much quicker if it's just a web app. So now, okay, you've learned about what works and what doesn't work. So what do you do? And I think this is another area where solid technical underpinnings can really help you. So once upon a time you had to ask some guy to make a change, and then a week later you would make that change and you push it to your web server, and hopefully it doesn't break something that someone else is using. But now you can have 10 versions of your website up there. You're doing some UX testing, you watch people use it, and then what you learn, you can quickly turn around and apply. So for the prototype that led to the product that we have now, I actually went to Detroit, and there are people who are going to use this on their phones in Detroit. They're going to drive around, and they were going to basically survey the condition of commercial properties. They're going to use this phone app to keep track of that. And so I sat in the back seat and I watched them do this, and there were some issues, and they were technical issues, and some of them led to user experience issues. So we were using GPS constantly to track where they were going, so the battery would die too quickly. And you see that as they're using it, you see that actually they always just move straight down the street. So you don't constantly need to update because it's easy to just scroll down the street. So then I went back to the hotel, and I called my teammate, and we did some coding in the middle of the night, and then the next day I followed some other people around, and now we had changed some of those issues with a solution that we thought might improve it, and now we can actually see, does that improve it? And so being able to quickly turn that around, and if someone else is using it, in sort of a more production environment, it doesn't matter, because this is a separate version of the app, you can quickly throw it up on a new server. And so when you hear people talk about, agile development and, iteration and iteration cycles and all that, it's important to, you know, to cut through the buzzwords and really think about what they mean. I think that if you're not doing the technology, the sort of method they use to build a feature, you know, if they want to use words like agile or whatever, are a little bit less important than people think. But the way that fits into the rest of the business. So if you want to be able to test things, is their workflow such that you can quickly test, you know, a few different things, or will they need to go off for a week and build something and then come back to you, right? So that second thing, when you're in your early stages, is just not going to be as helpful. So then, okay, for the sort of deeper technical things, this is actually a really cool thing about, you know, being in the space right now. So in the 90s, if you wanted to do any of these things, if you wanted to use the web to talk to people about beer, you were buying a web server, or you were, you know, paying people to maintain that server. This was a massive investment. And nowadays, that's just not the case. If 5 people are even using your site, then that site will cost you $0. And when 1,000 people are using it, it'll cost you a little bit of money, but now you maybe have a little bit of money coming in, or now you can show people, hey, this is actually valuable, you should invest in me, and now you have money to pay for it. And, you know, based on what you're doing, we can go into the details of, you know, what some of these services are, or you can kind of look around and find them. But for hosting, you have things like Heroku, where you can have a pretty, you know, rich web application, and when there's not anybody using it, you're not paying for it. And for them, it's no big deal, because now, when you scale it up, you just say, instead of having one of these, have 10 of these, because I've got tons of people coming, and now they're charging you money. For databases, it's very simple. You can find, you know, you can start getting data into your database, and then pay for it, and have a lot of it, storage, all of that. And so I think that removes a lot of barriers, and that lets you do things like, you know, test 5 different versions of this, test too quickly, put up fake versions. You know, if you can post something for free, then as soon as you have an idea, you can kind of put it up there. The next morning, go to a coffee shop and ask people to use it, you know, buy them a coffee. And this is a real thing, you know, if you haven't had experience working with user researchers, people will just, you know, quickly put something together, go to a cafe, and if you buy someone a coffee, they'll look at your website, you know, what do they care? And now you get people that you don't know, who are just regular people, and you can watch them use your site, and they get coffee out of it, so everybody wins. And a few people will think you're, you know, maybe a weirdo, but in San Francisco, it's a high bar, so it's unlikely to be an issue. So, I mean, that was sort of a general overview, but, I mean, do you guys have specific kind of, like, concerns about technology? Like, what is it about technology or design that you know, keeps you up at night?
Yes. I think a lot.
A lot? I mean, how many of you feel like you would have a hard time finding someone to work with who could actually build the technology? Okay. So I think there's 2 aspects to that. So one is being able to talk to someone in a way that you understand if they're on the same page as you, you understand if they're good, and you kind of know what all they're saying. And then the other side is, how do you even find these people in the first place, right? So first of all, you know, we're very well disguised. We're among you at bars and cafes and stuff like that. And so if you see someone, I mean, the hoodie isn't always